Hi, everybody. Welcome to my new channel. It's called Silent Screams. I am a cult survivor of 13 years. I was involved in what we call the New Apostolic Reformation. This is a group of people that claiming they are apostolically gifted, miracle signs and wonders. They are telling you that you can be prosperous. The more you give, the more you'll prosper. Um, and I was introduced to this kind of hands-on type apostolic tongue talking teaching by my husband, that is Australian. Currently, we are separated. And we were together for over 13 years. And I do not hold any ill feelings towards him, or do I lay blame on why we are separated. Um, I blame the system. I do. I absolutely blame the system and the abuse of power of these pastors and the leadership. And we just parted as friends. We just left and parted as friends. We tried to make a go of it for 13 years. I met him online through Christian Mingle, and we sailed for a year and a half together, and we snorkeled, and we fished, and we seen islands, and we've been everywhere, sailing together. We had good times. It was when we got back on land and we started to build a house that was on a property that he sold to, was supposed to be a friend of his, a buddy of his, and that's when the problems began. And because of these pastors and their abuse of power, and then there was a what we call a split within the church, and then it splintered off onto other churches as well. So there was a cluster of them. They were teaching everything from replacement theology to hands-on healing to this new apostolic reformation, tongues talking, the gold dust falling from the ceiling, feathers, everything like that. And I was not used to that. Growing up, it was very simplistic. My belief in God is very simplistic. Matter of fact, my grandmother was Methodist. Okay, and then she went to later on to a Presbyterian church. So she taught us grandkids in her home, and it was just basic Bible stories. So I was never involved in that insanity, and never to the depth of it till I got over to Queensland. And they don't call it the Bible Belt for nothing. Okay. There is a notorious cult leader over there named A.J. Miller, and he claims that he is another David Koresh, another sinful Messiah. And still to this day, he's still recruiting them online. He has got a wife. Um, her name is Mary, and he's got her convinced, believing that he's got her brainwashed into believing she's Mary Magdalene. Okay. It is part of the indoctrination, or the mind manipulation of um, anything from mysticism and occult mixed in with that, and that's what happens. And you know, uh, just trying to recover from all of it, and I never wanted to be separated from my husband. I just want us to live happily ever after. No woman goes and gets married and say, just because I didn't want to be with you. And the fact that he's Australian and I'm Native American. There was always a strain there with some of the people that didn't really want me over there, and so we had a lot. We had a lot in common, but then again, there were some differences that we didn't agree on, and they just pretty much used him, and they still do, as their personal workhorse, because they know he's talented, and that's what they do. These people abuse their power by saying, look, they got a talent. Whether there's a lady from Instagram, her name's Leah Lauder, beautiful singer, and still is, and she was in that for 17 years. So they use your talents and your abilities so they can become rich. Okay, you ain't never going to see, $1 million homes. You're not going to see brand new cars off the lot. But let me tell you what, they'll brag about it. And I've got some things to share with you, things that happened to me personally, and how it ended. And it's important that I share it with you, because I don't want anyone to go through. I would never want my worst enemy to go through this. Okay. You hear about the documentaries of Waco, you hear about documentaries of Jonestown, and then when someone is really sharing something where they literally come out of that, you know, it's important that you get educated so that you're not putting yourself back into a vulnerable position. And they will take your vulnerability. These narcissistic people will take your vulnerability and just use you, completely pull the rug from underneath your feet, and bye, see ya. And then if you don't do what they say, they shun you, throw you out, and then everything that you ever had as far as family unit or being a part of family, because I was away from family, because see, I moved there. I mean, I sold I got rid of my trailer, all my belongings, sold my car, and it was whisked off on his so-called white horse, and then, we got married 26 days later, and they paid for the wedding. They did. They paid for the wedding. And, it was just it's within the church group. There was very few outsiders that were part of it. And so that should have been red flag, but it wasn't. I was just wanting someone to share my life with. And, my husband he's a good man, and he's a hard worker, and he's very vulnerable, and he's extremely, he enables their behavior. He enables their abuse. And I'm not like that. I'm just the opposite. I'm like, I'm not going to tolerate that. I'm sort of like the big mouth. I'm the one that says, no, I ain't putting up with that. And so there has been not only abuse of power, there has people like myself that I've been physically injured because of these groups within Queensland, Australia. And they will never ever admit that they were wrong. They will never reconcile. They will never say that we did these things wrong. We shouldn't do them again. Because, see, they ghost you. They leave and they think, well, you're the one that caused it. But they'll turn it on you and make it look like that you caused it, you see. So, with that being said, I'm just going to introduce myself about, this. I'm 60 years old. I'll be 61 in September. And the things that I have experienced, it's a nightmare. Okay. Some of the stuff that I'm thinking, that's why I shake my head. I'm like, no, nope. But then, when I'm glad that I got a hold of Leah Lauder, because she talks about these things. And I'm like, well, thank God somebody else gets it. Somebody else sees that, and for so long it's been so hidden and people don't want to talk about it. Okay. Um, Currently, I am not attending a church. It's not that I don't believe in God. I am at the point where I need to take time out and heal. Okay. I do not blame God. Okay. I don't. I don't blame him. My husband is angry and he blames God for our separation. But that's something that he has to personally deal with. And when people are, benefiting from you financially because they can abuse you and abuse their power, they'll do it. And that's what happened. It's caused a split up in our relationship. And, that's what it says in the Bible. The enemy comes to kill, steal, and destroy. Jesus came that we may have life and have it more abundantly. It is not abundant life when you're sitting under some conference where somebody's telling you, all they got to do is lay hands on you out in the woods and you're going to get that apostolic gifting and you're going to have brand new cars off the lot. It's a big fat lie. It's a lie. And if people continue to sit under it and feed and fuel the fire, then they're going to continue to pass that down. They'll pass it down to their children. Now it becomes a business. It's not a church anymore. It's not about, sharing what is just beneficial, which is just the basic gospel. Now it's all about more money, more money. You see? So that's why I talk about it, because I don't want people to be abused like I have with it. And I'm starting all over. Look, I don't have any money in my bank account. I'm in between jobs. I don't even have a house. I'm trying to get rent. I'm trying to start all over again. And then we're separated. You know, um, it has hurt us. And I know he's hurt, and I'm just as hurt. And I still cry about it. I still think about it, and I think, well, damn, how did this happen? But it did. Okay. And that's what happens when people abuse their power. And then, they stripped us. I mean, we lost our retirement. We lost everything. And, and they never, not once, reconciled or made it better. That's because Unless you're in with them, sort of like Scientology, then they don't want nothing to do with you. They'll make excuses that it's some other problem. You can fix it with herbs or something, herbs. But it's not. It's not that. It's abuse of power. And until people recognize that, they it's called swallowing your pride, right? And say, look, what I did was wrong and I'm sorry. But they won't do that. If you're an empathetic person and you say, I'm sorry, they'll just look at you like, well, you ought to be, you know. And so I'm at the point where I don't contact them, I don't talk to them, because they will always spin it. They spin it. They're spin doctors, and they'll spin it saying that you're the one that caused your husband to act that way. You're the one that caused him to feel that way. And it's not that. It should be a 50-50 relationship. It's not, 10-90. Okay. It's not that. And but they're good at making it look like that you're the fault, you're the reason. And that's why they shun you, because now you're not following with the program, you're not with the program, and you're not in, now you're out. Okay. And now you're considered the outsider and the troublemaker. Okay. So with that being said, I just want to kind of invite you guys, and this is kind of new. It's hard to talk about a lot of things. You know, I'm sorry if I do break down, if I do cry, because I still have feelings for him. We've had 13 years together, and we've had good memories. We've had wonderful memories together. We've laughed together. We've cried together. I was there when his mother passed away at the hospital, and I was there when his dad died, and I was there at both funerals, and I was there for his children. I was there for him. It wasn't like I'm just there, okay? And I can say truthfully, I tried. I tried. And I'm not going to wear that guilt on my shoulders, or that heavy guilt on myself anymore, because it wasn't all just me, okay? It was him too. And that's what happens when you get suckered in things like that, and you're thinking, what the hell am I doing now? Why am I there? That's because they take your vulnerability and then they capitalize so they can get rich off your vulnerability. And I'm sorry, but I'm going to say this up front before I finish. Paula White is a fraud. She is not. She is not a Christian. You don't tell people you need money from them in order to bless them. Okay. You don't use money as a dangling carrot to say, look, if you give money, then God will bless you. Because where does that go? It goes in Paula White's pocket. Look at the houses. Look at all the money she's got. And, it goes completely against what the Bible's talking about. You know. But they will say, no, no, this is because God loves me, and wherever I go, God goes. They say things like that, crazy things like that. Or that God's speaking in my ear, or God's telling me dreams, signs, visions, and wonders. And there's no truth in it. Okay. It's very almost to the point that it's like psychosis. And you once you're in it, it's hard to get out of it, because if you're not allowed to critically think for yourself, then they constantly put you in that. It's like a hamster wheel. You're constantly going through the hamster wheel, and they don't want you stopping. If you stop, then now you're thinking, you see. But as long as the wheel's going, keeps going and going, then they have you. But when you stop and you start thinking for yourself, that's when it becomes dangerous, because now you're a danger to them, because you're on to their games, and you're on to the fraud that they committed. I hope you guys enjoy the channel, and I will be sharing some more with you later on. Have a good day.